are learning for L'Refuah Shlema to Yecheskel ben Tzila. We're also learning for L'Refuah Shlema for David ben Nasriah. This is a very close friend of mine, Rabbi Yaron Ruvain. His father was assaulted by a gang of criminals, and he was showcasing, his jewelry, and they robbed him. They assaulted him and robbed him of hundreds of thousands of dollars. Baruch Hashem, he got back home today, but he was in the hospital, and so besides learning and asking everybody also to pray for David ben Nasriah and also to Yecheskel ben Tzila for Refuah Shlema, they also started a GoFundMe page for him because he was, a big supporter of Torah, and now he lost hundreds of thousands of dollars. And so anybody who could help, I could share you that the link if you want to donate to him. Okay, so now, location. Everybody's welcome to join us at BJX at 1601 Quentin Road at Thursdays at 8 p.m. But always good to double check to make sure that we are here. I believe for the near foreseeable future. When's the fake holidays coming up? Is any of those on a Thursdays?
No.
None of them on Thursdays? Okay. I know some people are very makbid. They have days beforehand and days afterwards because you have to fast beforehand. Obviously for the unfortunately. I was actually thinking about speaking about that topic, but I spoke about it so much in the past, and it gets me angry every time I speak about it. So I figured it's good for my health if I stay away from it. But we do have some classes online that are that I would recommend people to listen to regarding this season. It is the season for sinning. So okay. So now let us begin. So tonight we're actually going to be finishing off our series, which is I don't know. It's kind of sad, all grown up. This is class number 32. Isn't that crazy? 32 classes. Gematria Lev, obviously, on purpose. Because the heart of the Jewish, understanding. So what we did was, in the past 32 classes, sporadically, obviously, that we went to prove God and went to prove the Torah. Now, what we did I believe it was last class that we gave on this subject was because I've given so many classes on, like, let's say proving God and proving the Torah, people are like lost. We're like, okay, but how am I supposed to go? How am I supposed to go and present it? How am I supposed to go and give over this type of information? This. Did I forget to answer you back? I didn't. I did answer you. I had no idea what's going on. Okay, good in that case. Okay, so now where was I? So we gave so many classes on proving God and proving the Torah that people were a little bit lost. So what we did in the last class was sort of gave like a brief overview, a little bit of new information, a little bit of just like a summary on how to understand it. So today also, B'ezrat Hashem, what we'll do is last time we gave a brief overview on how to prove in like an hour or so how to prove God. Today we're going to do that with the Torah. So what we do have to also understand when speaking to people about proving people about the Torah or people proving about God, there's something that is very, very important when dealing with this is, does that other person have something known as intellectual honesty? Which I like to, explain as if there are two ideas that are presented before you, and one of them is stronger in facts, then intellectually speaking, if it's stronger, then you should go and lean towards a stronger one. If somebody goes and leans more towards the weaker one, then they're not being intellectually honest. They have their own agenda, their own wanting that they want to go. So when we're dealing with this, it's very, very important. So either anybody sitting over here or people that are listening in the virtual world, it is very, very important in just a life always to be honest with yourself. If you're doing something wrong, don't start giving yourself excuses. It's really not so bad. Kids need drugs anyways, and I need money. I'm missing a new purse. People go and they give themselves all these things. Don't do that. If you're doing something wrong and you want to do it, it's you have free will. You can do whatever you want, but just know that you're doing something wrong. There's no hope. It doesn't help you at all if you go and you lie to yourself. All the more so when you're researching a topic as important about Judaism, about the Torah, about God, there can be nothing more important than this. By the way, this either shapes or breaks your entire life. The way that you're going to live your life is very, very much dependent if there is a God or if there is no God. It's so important to understand if the Torah is valid or the Torah is not valid. You can't just go into it and be like, yeah, kind of, okay, but I'm not interested in this on Tuesdays, on Wednesdays, maybe Thursdays there's sushi, so I'll do this on Thursdays. You go and you start, that's not going to help. You have to go with intellectual honesty. So, The idea with this is that the more intellectually honest with yourself, the more likely that you will find the truth. I've had many debates and arguments with people on this, and one thing that I've noticed, in this religious, then they became not religious, never been religious. People have a very, very, very basic understanding of Judaism. When they come to argue with this, when they come and they say, no, the Torah is not true, and they start presenting points, they have a very, very weak understanding of Judaism. Now, the reason why I have a problem with that is that imagine somebody goes over to a doctor, a lawyer, it doesn't matter, any profession that takes a lot of time to study, and the doctor, the lawyer presents their information, says, based off my research, based off my years in college and everything that I've done, this is my assessment, this is what you need. And you're going to go back to them and say, hey, listen, sometimes I hear dogs speak. It's one of my many talents. When the FBI are not listening to me, I listen to the dog speak, and the dog told me that this is not true. And so what's going to be? And they expect to be like, okay, am I supposed to now argue with your dog? People come in, and they start arguing on the Torah, but you don't know the Torah. You're starting to come argue on a doctor and a lawyer, but you don't know the basics about law or about medicine. How can you begin to, if you want to really argue on that, understand the basics. I'm not saying understand so much, but understand the basics of it. So now, the way that we're going to begin with this, if I could give you a little bit of an outline of the plan, B'ezrat Hashem, for tonight, would be, number one, how do we know that God still is active in the world? So we proved already that God exists, that there is a God. But how do we know that God is active? Once we know that God is active, God is there, why do we need religion? Then once we have why do we need religion, we also have to figure out, okay, what's the difference between this religion and all the others? There is a very, very big, huge difference between our religion and every other religion. Once we get that, then we could prove religion, and finally we'll finish off with the icing on the cake with proving the oral law, which people have a very hard time, I guess, getting a grasp on. Okay, so now, let us begin. The idea is that when people come and argue with think of it as something called the watchmaker theory. And this is a little bit of a spin-off on it. Someone creates a watch. So there's a creator to the watch. But does the watchmaker constantly go to the watch and says, tick, tick, just make sure you tick every 2 seconds? No, they don't do it. They created it and they left it. Now it works by itself. So maybe God created the world, but sort of said, took a sabbatical. Literally, right? It says, go and then just do his own thing. It doesn't really matter what happens in the world. So, in order to answer this, we have to understand why in Judaism we make a huge thing about the Exodus. If you realize that, the Exodus, Yetziat Mitzrayim, we're mentioning it all the time. You have an obligation to mention it every single day. In Kriyat Shema, we mention it every single day. We have it on Kiddush. On Shabbat, we're doing it. We're constantly obsessed with the Exodus. Now, why? There are so many other huge things in Judaism that happen. Why are we so obsessed with the Exodus? So, in order to understand what Judaism stands on, we have to know that, number one, there is a God. And number two, that God is actively running the world. God didn't stand back. God is actively inside and has the deepest connection to every single being, inanimate, animate, in the world. Now, the first thing to know that God exists, the way that we show that, the way that we, show is a good word, the way we show that is by keeping Shabbat. We keep Shabbat. By us keeping Shabbat shows that what happened, that God created the world in 6 days, rested on the seventh day, so too we work for 6 days, and we rest the seventh day. This shows that God created the world. Now that doesn't show that God is actively running the world. That's where the Exodus comes in. The Yetziat Mitzrayim, what happened in the Exodus? There was, a tremendous show of a manipulation of nature on God's part, showing we have everything from the 10 plagues to the splitting of the sea, to the giving of the Torah, to the man. There are so many things that happen that show that God is actively running the world. And even more so, we're not going to have time to break this into this. I don't know if I spoke about this on a Pesach class, but when you break up each of the plagues, it shows God's dominion of every creature. For example, lice, a very small, tiny creature, shows that God has dominion even on the smallest thing, the water. And then you have the frogs, the animal that loves, the amphibian, the water, and then you have darkness, and you have hail. Basically, from all spectrums, from the bottom till the top, everything is covered. So what we're showing over here, Exodus is showing that God is actively controlling and involved in the world. And that's what we're doing. We're showing that God is no longer, not no longer, it never was that God sort of just created the world and took a step back. And then people, generally I have this question, be like, okay, that was the Exodus. That was 3,300 years ago. What about today? And, a general answer is that only in a bad relationship does the spouse have to constantly remind how much they love each other. It's not every single day that the husband has to come home with a poem for his wife. I mean, it's nice. If anybody does it, chazak u'baruch, amazing. But I'm saying it should not be needed. Obviously, showing of love and care and affection, all these things are very, very important. It has to be on a constant basis. But to show the world, do a wedding every single day. I mean, that shows that you need that if you need that big of an extravagant show of love and affection every single time, then it shows there's a lack of relationship. It's an immature relationship. So to expect that God, for you, well, God never showed me the Exodus. But, oh, I'm so sorry. Well, please, come join us in Egypt, and we'll present, we'll have we'll have the good food. We'll have one of those programs, and we'll show you, because obviously you're a very important person, and out of all the people, God didn't show you. And people feel very no, how come I don't understand? To be that's a very bad relationship. You're basing it off so many other things that need to have the foundation. If you're looking for the big wedding day every single time, then you're not going to get it. And in fact, everybody does have, in everybody's life, there are periods or times that people see and that someone's watching over them. There's something going on over here. The more alert you are to your surroundings, the more that your eyes are open, the more that you see this. And I've had conversations with people that, from the lowest to the low to the top of the top, that are able to see this. And I've had people that had miracles that happened to them and couldn't even see it. So if you open your eyes, you can see that God is actively running the world. If you close your eyes, then whatever, you're not going to see anything. The idea with when you deal with religion, one of my the truth is, I enjoy this part way too much when I do this. But if I speak to people, let's say, that don't believe in the Torah, they don't believe in God, they don't believe in anything, and I like asking, this is the morality question: are you a good person? Because you don't believe in God, you don't believe. So, are you a good person? And I've never met a bad person. It's unbelievable. I've never met. I guess maybe because it's not Christianity. It's like, hello, Rabbi, I've sinned. You'd be like, give 5 Hail Moses and I don't know whatever for it's not there's no it's not you don't get people. Obviously people come to me that they've done bad things, but when I confront somebody, hey, are you a good person? And 10 out of 10 times they're like, yeah, I'm a good person. And then I follow up the question with hey, tell me what good did you do? And it's almost like I could predict it with almost, it'd be like, what do you mean? I'm like, you told me you're a good person, so just I guess prove it. Give me examples. What good that you do? Do you give charity? Do you help a lady cross the street? Do you put on a Superman costume at night? I don't know if that's good or not. But I'm saying, what do you do? And almost all the time, it comes down to well, I didn't steal. I didn't, kill anybody. I didn't. By not doing something doesn't make you a good person. Maybe you're not evil, but it doesn't make you a good person. And the idea with this is when you're dealing with people that either don't believe in religion, the whole idea of morality comes to a very, very difficult understanding. How can you explain morality? And I'll give you an example with abortion. So nowadays, there is a big, I don't know, big or whatever. It's still very popular, pro-life and what's it called, that whole thing. So, you go people that, let's say we'll say abortion, they should, it's, what is it, pro-choice. I love it how they spin it, everything positive. Pro-life and pro-choice. Why not pro-death? It's obvious it's death. It should be pro-life and pro-death. No. Pro-life and pro-choice. It's all it's all about the cell. So, I say, what's wrong with abortion? Because inside it's not considered alive. Once it comes outside, it's considered alive. And who decided that? Did you decide that? Did you have a council meeting? And be like, well, listen, everybody, okay, and this is what's considered okay, and this is what's considered not. Where is it that we decide? If there's no God and there's no religion, then who are we to decide what is right and what is wrong? And how? This is why religion is so important. People go and you look at through history. you go back, you don't have to go back that many, hundreds of years ago, if any, 100 to 150 years ago, children used to work. And it was a great thing. You look at it and be like, what are you talking about? This is amazing that the children are working. Now it's child abuse. So in our perspective, in our glasses that we're looking at it, it's child abuse. But in a previous glasses, it's the greatest thing. So who's correct? Who's right? What's morality? What's right and what's wrong? Is it depending on you? That's who you decide what's right and what's wrong? If so, then let's say even in the same day and age, people in the Western society have a very different, understanding of what is right and what is wrong from, let's say, the Islamic side of things. The jihad, what's right and what's wrong. Hitler's followers, the Nazis, they thought that they were doing what right. People always consider what they're doing is right. So who are you to decide what is right and what is wrong? And people say you don't really need religion. Religion doesn't, have any effect in it. Look at the mafia, Palestinian Authority. The killing is a great thing. Protecting the family, protecting the country, protecting the state, whatever it is, it's a great thing. So killing is good for some people, killing is not good for somebody else. Now who are you, if you don't believe in any higher power, then who are you to decide that killing is right or killing is wrong? And people will say, well, what do you mean? Like killing is bad. We know killing is very simply bad. Well, why don't we say killing is bad when animals kill each other? And in fact, people that don't believe in God or don't believe in any religion, they and it's not not always 100% this way, but they tend to say also that the way that we have morality is based off evolution. We sort of changed and our morality became different as we came along. So if you're basically an animal with a slightly, well, if you believe in evolution, not whatever, but slightly better intellect, depending on your level of intellect. So if you have then what makes you say that killing is wrong? Like if a lion kills a rabbit, are you going to put the lion in prison? No, you're not going to punish the lion. So why are you punishing other people? Who says that you have the right to decide what's wrong in other countries and other places? And who are you to decide it? If you don't believe in religion, there's a lot of things that fall into play. So we have over here a very, very, a strong, foundation that there is a need for religion. And then you have these atheists that come and say, religion is the cause of so much death. There was a very famous atheist that said that one of the largest causes of death is religion. And really, if you know a little bit about recent history, about that you have Hitler and Stalin alone killed close to, roughly, I would say between, I guess you could say 40 to 60 million people. Atheists. 2 atheists killed, roughly 60, you're talking about a tremendous amount of people, and you're telling me that religion is what killed? Yeah, okay, we have religious fanatics that go and they murder and they destroy, but to say that religion is the basis that's just taking reality and looking at just what you want to look at. I'm just picking what I want to look at. And this is a very, very strong and a difficult problem when dealing with people, let's say, don't want to believe in God, don't want to believe in the Torah, don't want to believe in religion. They're not looking at things from clearly. Now, obviously, I look at things from a different angle, and and everybody that has their own upbringing looks at things from a different angle. But if you're just taking a step back for a second and trying to be intellectually honest, you could see things that are very obvious. And by the way, this intellectual honesty is very important in every aspect in your life. Anything from choosing a profession to choosing a spouse. You realize when people go and when people get involved in, let's say, a relationship, then many times they're not correctly thinking because they're emotionally involved, or they have other reasons to be involved. So they're not thinking, they're not being intellectually honest with them. They're not making sure, is this the right choice that I'm making, or is this a wrong choice that I'm making? So intellectual honesty comes across, every playing field of human life. And yet, even though we know that it's so important, we tend to forget it and not even give it the importance that it's needed. Additionally, if we can say that there is a God, and if we can say that that God is actively, looking over the world, then there must be a purpose to life. There must be a purpose to life. One of the most depressing things in the way that I see it is to realize that there is no purpose. If you realize people that feel no purpose usually are I can't say clinically depressed, but are down a lot. There's if you don't have a purpose to life, you don't. What are you enjoying life for? And so if your purpose is to making money, so at least you have a purpose. That's your purpose. But people that have no purpose, it's a very, very depressing life. You're living for nothing. And we know that if there is a God, and the God is actively, overlooking the creation, there must be a purpose. There's no reason, there's no creation for nothing. So now, according to Judaism, anybody know what one of the purposes are? Every time I play this game, it's pleasure. Oh, very good. Pleasure. What were you going to say? You don't want to answer. I know. Okay.
Serve God. To serve God.
To serve God. I can never say that these are wrong answers. Unless people start saying to make money, follow my desires. I guess there's some wrong answers. But generally speaking, there's... one of the Mesilat Yesharim says that one of the purpose of creation is to gain the greatest pleasure. And only the greatest pleasure is something that is not in this world. Because we know that anybody that has chased any pleasures knows that it's very, very obvious that you cannot go and achieve the greatest pleasure in this world. Because every time you achieve a greatest pleasure, you realize that pleasure, the more that you do it, the less pleasurable it is. It's something called hedonic adaptation. The more that you do something, the less that you can feel it and understand it. I'll give you an example. There are people. One of the ways that, let's say, they try to do, exercise, let's say they're running. So what helps burn more calories and helps, run faster, they'll put weights on their feet. I don't know if anybody has ever done that. I've done this. It puts whatever, I've done, so you take weights on your feet and you go and you run. Now, eventually, you'll forget that, obviously it'll be a little bit more difficult, but if you build up tolerance, you'll be able to jog regularly with those weights. Now, once you go and once you're going and you get used to that and you take off that, you feel like you're flying. What is that guy that runs very fast in the cartoons? Speeding Gonzalez. There's another guy that spits a lot. Roadrunner, whatever it is. Okay, Roadrunner, right. The guy this is what we show our kids. Isn't that, it's like one is constantly trying to assassinate him, right?
The wolf is trying to...
I'd never understand this. I can never understand cartoons. Like anything from, there was also the Cat and the Mouse, Tom and Jerry. Tom and Jerry. This is the most violent thing that I've ever seen. If you look at it as an adult, oh, it's so funny, big hammer, bling, oh, it is, and the kids are like this. And this is what children are watching over this. And let's try to, and then there's, every single one. Bugs Bunny.
Elmer Fudd,
everything over here is such a dark world, and then we're wondering why are kids so violent? I don't know. I wonder. It's something that's beyond my understanding. When people go and people show their kids cartoons, you know what? In my opinion, there's some adult, PG-13 rated type of movies that are cleaner and more, healthier for children than cartoons are. I don't know who decides the ratings on these things. I've been out of this game for quite some time, but who is the one to decide that, yes, this is good for 13-year-olds and under, and this, I always wonder, 13 bar mitzvah, is this something different? Maybe the Jews are running Hollywood. Who knows? I don't know. So, but whatever it is, it's interesting. What about bas mitzvah? So, I don't know. What?
PG-13.
Fact, but why 13-year-olds? Oh, it's not 13-year-old? I always thought it's 13-year-old.
It's for 13. Theoretically, for 13.
It's when you become a man, I guess. I don't know. Now you can see death, and then go do your homework and play with your PlayStation. Okay, so now, how do we get to this? You guys go off topic all the time. It's so terrible. Okay, so purpose of life, cartoons, right? Makes sense. So now the purpose of life is to get the greatest pleasure. If we know we want to get the greatest pleasure, the only way to get greatest pleasure literally means that you're doing something and then you're doing it again, it gets even greater. And you're doing it again, it gets even greater. That doesn't work in this world. In the next world, that's what it goes. And we proved this from Pirkei Avot. We had a whole class on this, on the purpose of life. But the idea is that there's a purpose for creation. And the purpose is not for this world. Now, in order to go, and in order to, understand this, the idea of the Torah, one of the things that I really, feel is a great proof on the Torah is the fact that the Torah has predictions. The Torah can predict something, and once the Torah, and not only it predicts something that is not something that is predictable. So, for example, if I were to make a prediction, and that prediction is something that is very, very easy and obvious, and everybody else could predict it, I cannot say that I had some divine prophecy or whatever foresight. I was just able to look at the basic science of what things will happen, and I'll be able to predict it. Now, the Torah has something very, very interesting, and I like using this particular. There's tons of prophecies in the Torah. I like using this particular idea set of prophecies is because we're constantly seeing it come into play to this day, and that is the way that the Jews are existing. Now, the Torah goes, and if you go, let's say 2,500 years ago, I'll say 2,000 years ago even, 2.5, either one. And you go and you ask the people over there, so let's say after the destruction of the first temple or after the destruction of the second temple. It doesn't matter. Pick your fancy. And you go and you ask the chachamim of the generation over there, the secular geniuses, and you say, listen, what's going to be with the Jews? Now, imagine you have a group of a nation that's in a particular place of land, and it gets completely destroyed and completely taken over, and then the people are sent into exile. What would you say that would happen to that nation, those group of people, 100 years down the line, 1,000 years down the line? Would they still exist? Nobody would say that it would exist. Nobody in the right mind. And even nowadays, take a different situation. Take a group of people living on an island. And they're living on this island, and let's say you're talking about 3 million people living on an island. And you take this group of people, and, ISIS, is ISIS still a thing? It is? Okay, who knows, right? ISIS comes in, takes it over, right? Takes over the entire island, and takes everybody. Instead of kills a bunch of people, of course, obviously, they have to, otherwise there won't be ISIS. But they go and they kill a bunch of people, and then they send them into exile throughout the entire world. And then this group of people were known to be very, very devoted in their dress and their talk and their everything that they do. They had very, very set, rigorous circumstances based on their religion. And you would go and you would ask sociologists, anybody that studies, people and society, and you go and you ask them, in 500 years, will these people still exist? Would anybody say yes? I would today. If you would ask me this question, I would say no. It doesn't make sense. Logically speaking, it doesn't make sense. Then the question is asked, then how is it that the Jews are still around today? We were exiled not once, but twice out of our country. We were sent all over the world. We were, this is not including the amount of hatred that we had towards us. You go anything from the Spanish Inquisition to the Crusades to the Holocaust to everything in between to Tachvatat. There's so many things that we're just constantly being bombarded with hate. Even in America, that's also happening. So we're constantly doing that. Why are we still here? Why are we still here? And in fact, the Torah says all this is going to happen. It says about it, and I'll give you some of the sources. First of all, in Malachi, chapter 3, verse 6, it says that the Jewish nation will never be wiped out. And this is repeated many, many times throughout the Torah, in Leviticus, Deuteronomy, as well. Also, it says in Devarim, chapter 4, verse 27, that V'hefitz Hashem etchem ba'amim, God is going to scatter you into the world. God is going to put you into exile. And then it also says that God is going to return you from that exile in Devarim, in Deuteronomy, chapter 30, verse 3 to verse 5. So, we have over here a very, very interesting prediction. Here's a prediction that the Torah is saying that, hey, you're going to go into exile. Okay. That's not a very, that's an easy prediction. Anybody could go and predict that. Say, hey, yeah, this group of people is going to go into exile. But to say that group of people is going to be returned, like, why? Why would you say, if you made this up, why would you go and say that? It makes absolutely no sense. And, when you look at it, the Jewish history, the Jews were exiled twice from the land. Then from the year 250 Common Era to the year 1948, it was a period of 1,700 years, the Jews were exiled, were kicked out of more than 80 countries. That is a lot of countries. 80 countries we were kicked out in 1,700 years. Why is it that we're still around? And not only that, the Torah says that we'll return. And not only that we returned something that's so hard to understand. No other nation in history has ever been exiled and returned back into that own land. 3 times. Actually twice if you count it. So the first, after the destruction of the first temple, the Jews went into exile. Then they came back. And then they came back in by the building of the second temple. And then, many, many years later, in 1948, fairly recently, all of a sudden the Jews got the land of Israel back again for the second time. How does that make any sense? Where else do we see that in history? And the Torah says that. The Torah says that you're going to go back into your land. And furthermore, in Devarim, chapter 4, verse 27, by the way, these are all predictions. That doesn't make sense that it should happen. In Deuteronomy, chapter 4, verse 27, it says that you're going to be kept very, very small amount in the amongst the people. Now, why? Why would it say that you'll be kept in a very, very small amount? If anything, by the way, the Jewish people and the Chinese people both lived around the same time. The Jewish people had about 10 million people. The Chinese had about 30 million people. Now the Chinese are well over 1 billion. The Jews are about 14 million. So we went from 10 to 14 in 2,000 years. The Chinese went from 10 million to over 1 billion in the same period of time. Now, why is that? The Torah says specifically you're going to remain the few. Now, it should either be, when you look at it from a scientific standpoint, from looking at it back, either the Jews should not exist or they should be in the hundreds of millions. being in that like in between zone of like, yeah, we're here, type of situation makes absolutely no sense. There's also a prediction in the Torah that there's going to be the destruction of the land of Israel. There's going to be not only there's going to be a desolation of the land of Israel, which means is when the Jews are not going to be in the land, it's not going to be productive. When the Jews are going to come back, that's when it's going to be productive. Who would make that type of? Why would you ever say that? If you're going and you want to make up a religion, why would you ever put your foot in your mouth before you even have your shoe on? Like, it doesn't make any sense. And now that we see that, we see Mark Twain already when he went to Israel, says a land full of weeds. You look at it now there's so much export that goes out of Israel. You don't understand how come for the past 1,500 years before the Jews went into Israel was not productive. And all of a sudden now it becomes productive, and that's what the Torah says. And all this is by what? By chance? All these predictions? You have also there's more, and because of the time, I don't want to get stuck on. There's so many more predictions on this. It says that they're going to be exiled to a nation that they don't understand the language. Also, doesn't make any sense because people that used to put people into exile back then were neighboring countries. You understood the neighboring country's language. Here it was Latin. It was Rome that came in, and not the Greeks that everyone knew. Again, if I'm going over your head, it's because I'm going too fast. But I'm saying things that they predicted that made absolutely no sense. Worldwide dispersion. Who would spend so much money on dispersing people worldwide? Like, why is that beneficial? Like, why would you do that? And even furthermore, it says that there's going to be utter destruction to the people. When you conquer a land, you don't want to destroy them. That's going to ruin your tax base. You want people to live. Why would the Torah say, yeah, and they're going to get destroyed? There's going to be there was a very, very morbid prophecies that were going there. Why would you say that? Nobody would want to do that. In any case, that was the prophecies, the predictions. When you have a book and it has predictions that are coming into fruition that are not likely to come true, makes you think, maybe there's something here. Maybe there's something going on over here. So that's whatever number we're up to. Next thing I want to speak about is the fact of the Har Sinai. I cannot emphasize how strong this proof is. People don't understand. I've had arguments with people on this proof. That the proof being that there's, nowhere else do you have in history that you have a national revelation. You have 3 million people. The Torah says 600,000, men. You put the women and children and the older and younger men. You have over there roughly about 3 million people all heard God. Nowhere else do you have that in history. Now, these are the same people that had the Exodus, the splitting of the sea, the giving of the Torah, the man. They have all these huge miracles. The same amount of people. Now, if this was made up, then how come nobody else made up imagine what a great comeback it will be for Christianity. Christianity could come back and be like, because Christianity has a very, very weak claim. Because we have the claim, like, listen, 3 million people all heard God speak in Mount Sinai. And then Christianity says, yeah, but then the Son of God and the Son of God came back and he told everybody that this is null and void, and now we're going to something else. Now, the big question that anybody could ask and be like, well, why can't God tell us that also? Why did he tell you that only? Like Mr. Jesus, Jesus, depending where you're calling from, right? He says, what's going on? He says, why is it that God is, like, if God is really changing the whole religion, let him do the same thing. He has a track record. National revelation. Why didn't do it again? Now, if you want to say it was made up, then why didn't the Christians make that up? If something could be made up, you could do it again. And trust me, the Christians have more resources than the Jews had, nowadays and back then. So now, if it was something that they would be able to make up, they should have made it up. How amazing would it be for Islam if Islam, Muhammad did it by himself? What difficulty? You could have said, no, everybody heard it. If it was made up, why wasn't it made up again? Now, we have to understand the difference between history and legend. The difference between a historical fact and a legend is depending on the amount of eyewitnesses. If you have a few eyewitnesses, legend. If you have a tremendous amount of people that are witnessing something, that's an historical fact. And we have here an historical fact. We don't have here, a legend. And in fact, when you go to a majority of other religions, and I know we spend a lot of classes proving and going into other religions, but if you want to have one simple way to refute, or at least in comparison, other religions, it's very simple. Look how they began. when you're doing a religion, when you're starting a religion, you're looking into religion, you want to know, is this true or is it not? One of the ways to do it is look at its foundation. Whenever you want to do anything, you want to look at its foundation. That's a basic for anything. If you want to succeed in life, you have to start from the foundation. If you're going to start from the top, you're not. And I have people that come in, they don't know Chumash and they want to learn Kabbalah. They don't know. I'm like, I've had people, they ask me, I've had questions that people want me to teach, Kabbalistic, I don't want to say the books that they asked me to speak, Kabbalistic, concepts. I'm like, you don't know basics. Like, why are you going? It's like somebody that's going into, wants to become a doctor, didn't start pre-med yet, and he says, hey, listen, I want to try a surgery, all right? And he volunteers, like, where are you jumping into? You have to have a good foundation in order to understand it. Now, when you look at religion, the way that you want to know if it's foundation, look at its founder. How did it start? You look at religions, and let's go through, in the next, minute and a half, about a bunch of religions. Let's see how they started. The big religions, right? So Buddhism. Buddhism started with Prince Siddhartha Gautama. He started it by what? One person. He, went through the 8 stages of transic insight, and then he came out of it and said, hey, listen, guys, I just saw something crazy. Let's do this. We're going to sit in a pretzel. We're going to have plenty of fun stuff. There's not going to be much talking, whatever. Men are going to love it. Whatever it is, it's going to be great. And he starts his whole religion based off what? One dude, one guy. Then you have, we spoke about it already, Islam and Christianity. Islam started with Muhammad. Christianity started with JC and Paul, that came later. All one person. Why is it that these religions are starting with one person? You have Joseph Smith with the Mormon Church. Also, he was visited by angels. He had a partner, Oliver. But, whatever it was, 1 or 2 people came and started it. Sikhism, the Sikhs. There was Guru Nanak, 20-year-old person that went into the river to bathe, came back 3 days later and said, I had a, crazy revelation. I am whatever, the whole story, we spoke about it already before. We have things from Taoism, Confucianism, all the Easternism, Shintoism. Many of them don't have any founder. Many of them don't even have a rigid set of doctrines. They're not even claiming revelations. They're not even claiming that it to be divine. So when you look at all other religions, including Hinduism, folk Chinese, all these many religions that hundreds of millions of people follow, when you look at its source, nobody could, where's the source? Where did it start from? Did God come? There's nothing. There's nothing. And we went through this, in depth. Now, why is it that out of all the religions, only one of them has a national revelation? If it was made up, then everybody else could have done it. If it was real, then how come nobody else is following it? There's many questions that need to be asked on this. The Matan Torah is such a strong proof for Judaism that and people that come with like their rebuttals on it to try to disprove it, it's so weak. It's funny because a lot of it is so weak, and even when they try, it's literally pulling straws. They're pulling out of ear. They're trying to grasp nothing, and they don't even see it. And they think this is a good, it was made up and whatever, whatever answer they give, and we're going to go and knock out all those answers now. But whatever answer they give, there's nothing that holds away with that, because when you're dealing with a national revelation, it can't be fabricated. It can't. It's impossible. You cannot change history. And also when you have the idea, if it was made up, you would have had some break-off Jews. It would be like, okay, wait a minute, this never happened. We're going to go, and anything that, anybody knows anything about Jews, we're not going to be just like, hey, follow me, the guy from Australia, goes on an adventure. He's like, follow me on an adventure. They're gonna go and they're gonna destroy you. You're gonna live in the belly of a snake for a month. No Jew is gonna be like, whoa. Let's ask some questions first of all. He says, do you have insurance? I could sell you insurance. Jews are not just like blatantly followers. We're known to be questioning people. We question things. When you're going and you're selling a religion, if it is indeed fake, the number one rule, right, and this is in case anybody wants to start their own religion, so very important that you came today. So the number one rule is you don't make it hard. Because nobody's interested in a hard life. It'd be like, hey, listen, do you hate eating? Would you like to Do you love sweating in the summer? Covering your hair if you're married? Then join us, Judaism. Brought to you by Hollywood. Okay, so now when you're going and when you're thinking about it, the first thing that you would do about religion is not make it difficult. You look at Judaism, not only is it not the easiest religion, to say the least, but it also gives laws that makes no sense. Why would you do that? Meat and milk. Why? Meat, good. Milk, good. Together? No. Separate? Okay. Together? No. That's a no. Be like, why? And then you go, and then shotness. You have wool and linen. Separate? Good. Together? No. Circumcision. Do we really need to cut off body parts? Can we make things? If it was made up, by the way, why is it that? And by the way, the whole thing with meat and milk, there's obviously reasons to do it. We're not going to. I think we may have spoken about all these things, wool and linen. I don't know if we have, but we should actually. If we didn't, we should give a class on that. Very, very interesting, fascinating things about Cain and Hevel. Very, very interesting stuff. But in any case, you go and when you're trying to sell a religion, right? So imagine okay, what do we have to do with this religion? You take a whole thing. Okay, we got 613 commandments. I'd be like, 613 commandments? Relax. Everyone has about 1,000 subcategories. So and be like, this is made up, really? This would be made up? Does this make any sense to anybody? Shabbat, right? One thing you don't do is you don't mess with people's money. You could work, but Shabbat you can't do any work. And then besides that, what you do is that you're going to go and you're going to say, you have to keep Shabbat. Oh, and if you don't, mechaleh mot yumat. And by the way, you're going to die if you don't keep Shabbat. Now you're adding punishments into the thing? But who's going to join this religion? Who is going to join it? Yeah.
So I once gave this argument to somebody, and she told me, well, Islam also has crazy laws, and there's still people becoming Muslims, so
what's interesting with Islam and Christianity? A lot of the people that they convert to that, especially in the olden days, was not because they were forced into it. Yeah.
But what about now? People who are proud, and the ones that always say it's not all Muslims, and
Oh, right. So now you still have people that go. Yeah. Now you have people that convert. Right. So now you have people that go and they convert into this, and the answer for that is very simple. People are looking for something. People are searching for something, and sometimes they find it in Islam. Sometimes they find it in Christianity. Not that they're searching for the truth. They're searching for something. And you can find it. There's many ways that you could say, hey, listen, this is a good way out. I find this to be true. Thank you. There are people that go and they say, it's funny. I once heard this guy says, it was a Christian person asking people, do you believe in God? And then he asked one person, so which religion do you believe to? So he says Christianity. And he asked him, why did you believe in Christianity? He says, because I checked everything else and this one looked at the most true. And I started laughing. Thank you. And because you have people that they'll look into things, but they'll look into things. I'll tell you what the big problem with it. There's great stuff with the internet. Well, great. There's good stuff with the internet, and there's really, really, really bad stuff with the internet. Now, even when you're doing research, you're realizing when you're doing research of something on the internet, you're researching someone's opinion. Now, there's always facts into play, but it's always a spin on the way that they see things. So you have, let's say, people that go and they try to prove Christianity. Now, I can never understand how people could, so many people could fall for Christianity. People that are born into it, no question. They're obviously, they weren't looking into it. There's no but somebody that was searching and then went into Christianity, out of everything, you would ask questions. I've had, many people go from Christianity and they leave it because they ask questions. But yeah, it's very mind-boggling how you have people go and they search other religions and they end up in a false religion. And the answer is, and I was thinking about this, and the answer is that people tend to go and they're looking for something. So once they find something that they're associated with, and there's always a bias into it. They might be in a community, they live in Afghanistan. They have options over there. You want to be religious, you become Islamic. There are many peaceful Islamic people. I know that there are many peaceful. There are many peaceful Christians. There are many people, peaceful Islamic people. There are many good people in other religions as well. But it doesn't show the foundation. Well, they're looking for something, and they're finding it. They're okay with this. It doesn't mean that they went to search for the truth. Because if they went to search for the truth, then they would have tremendous amount of questions. Especially when you're going to a Semitic type of religion that is all based off Judaism and it's a break off, then you usually should start from the source and then go your way down.
Isn't the argument that why Judaism has to be real because it's just too hard? It works the same thing for Islam.
No, you think Islam? So what would you? The
And they dress harder than we do.
dressing, yes.
Like, I don't know their laws, but
They do have law. They pray 5 times a day if they're religious. They have halal, type of, food. But you're right. So if I were to say the hardest, there are people that go into these, monks that they have to fast all day. I'm not saying Judaism is true because it's hardest. I'm saying it's very unlikely to make it up because it's so hard. So the idea is that not say like, oh, it must be true because it's so difficult. The angle that I'm looking at is it's in the foundation. It's the beginning. You can't start something like that when it's so difficult. You look at Christianity, for example, or even Islam. Islam in its beginning, it's changed dramatically. There's nothing, and Judaism did not change dramatically. There are additional minor laws that came in, rabbinic fences, if you want to say. But Judaism, the way that we have it today, was the way that we had it, since the beginning of time. Obviously, there's, minor differences in the situation. There wasn't electricity. There's obviously different things. But, Islam and Christianity, if you study its origins, it's not even comparable to the religion that we have today. Xmas, those things that didn't exist in the beginning. They don't even know when he was born. It's you have so many different things that came into play afterwards that you can't really relate to compare these two types of religions. But anyways, when you're going into the idea of Har Sinai, of the giving of the Torah with millions of people, there are many people that try to go and make these things, say that it was made up. So let's being that we gave these types of classes, let's do a brief overview on this. Number one, the main thing is that it was forgotten, and what happened is that somebody came in and said, hey, listen, many moons ago, years ago, your ancestors stood in front of a mountain and they gave the Torah, but you forgot it, and here let me remind you about it. Now, the reason why this is so problematic is because people tend to forget huge things. Nobody forgot about the Black Plague. Nobody goes and is going to forget about a huge tsunami that kills millions of people. Nobody forgets about these traumatic events. These things you don't forget, because the greater the event is, the less likely that you are to forget about it. So to say that, hey, something huge happened to you, your entire nation spoke to God, but everybody forgot about it, is such a weak claim that it's not even, you can't even compare, really, that's really what, your claim is going to be. The problem is that you can ask somebody, a lot of our holidays are based off this. Shavuot, Passover, over the Exodus. When was the first Passover? When was the first Exodus? When was the first Exodus? It was only one. So funny. People don't even. I think I get it before the sound waves until it reaches you, right? The idea is that there's so many things that are based off our tradition since the beginning of time. Our things are started from the beginning of time. Then we should have a very strong foundation that this must have been the first Passover Seder was before we left Egypt. Was the night before we left Egypt. We had things ready since the beginning. So the second problem is that there is no explicit record of anybody coming and saying, hey, Jews, you forgot your past. Here's your past. Now, we have record for everything. Jews are very meticulous. We know about Moses, from Joshua to David, to everything we have written down. We don't have the greatest person ever in history. You forgot everything. I'm your savior. Here it is. Why don't we have that? The claim to say that, hey, so this is the claim of the past. That, hey, you forgot it, and here it is. I'm reminding you it now. There's another claim that says it was made up. How was it made up? It was made up because what happened was, in the future, this is what's going to happen. If I were, let's say, tell you something, hey, guys, in the future, this and this is going to happen, that's easy. It's very easily made up that way, because I could tell you in 400 years, something is going to happen. We're going to start a religion based off that. That's very easy to make up. But the problem is that I would need to write it. In the future, this is what's going to happen. Nowhere in the Torah does it say, in the future, this is going to happen. It says, this is what happened to you in the past. So you can't give somebody a book and say it's going to happen in the future, but don't worry about the words over there. It says in the past, whatever. These claims are very, very weak. And finally, one of the weakest claims is to say that Moses made it all up. How do you make that up? How gullible could a person be like, hey, by the way, you just heard God? No, I didn't. You did. You heard God. Kind of sure that I didn't hear anybody. I just woke up. It's, pretty late. I didn't wear it. Shh. You heard God, and that would sell. That's how you would lie presently. You cannot make a lie to say that you did something. I could tell a lie. I could tell you a lie. Hey, listen, I spoke to God. Me and my friends, we spoke to God. But if I tell you you spoke to God, you can't make that up. Any which way you look at the giving the Torah on Har Sinai, there is no way to make that up. There is no way that you can make it up. You could say that the probably the strongest claim that they would have is that it came in over time. Over time, things came, and this is we spend at length to go and explain this. Very, very weak claim to say over time things happen, because if I were to tell you a story and we're saying this story for hundreds of years, how am I going to change that story? Everybody's going to have to change the same story. You realize we don't have 10 different accounts of the Mount Sinai. We have one. All the Jews scattered throughout the entire world, we have one account on it. So if things changed over periods of time, we would have several accounts of it. There's so many different things. And out of all the classes that we gave on this, I very strongly recommend, this is one of the classes that's very important to listen to again and again, the one regarding proving Judaism through Har Sinai, because that is a very, very strong claim. There is absolutely nothing that, there's always different claims that Bible critics will have in it. I have yet to find something that's even close to solid on a not even close to solid, close to a liquid, basic to argue on this. You have also you had miracles that happen, 40 years straight, the man was being fallen down. How do you make that up to people? There's so many things in the Torah that you can't make up. There's prophecies, there's things that you can't make up, there's proofs, historical facts that shows you that many, many people came into, it all proves to one thing, that it must be that it's true. It must be. There's no other solution to it. You could try, and people try so hard to try to grab at things that maybe it's not, maybe this. Why is it you realize that Christianity and Islam base it off of Judaism because Judaism is true? And it's much easier to say, hey, listen, that was true, but now it's changed, than to say, here's a new religion. Because people realize and people believe that was true. Also, if the Torah was made up, you don't make the leaders look bad. For example, you don't have anything in the New Testament say that Jesus was bad, that Jesus did something wrong. There's nowhere in the Quran that Muhammad made a mistake. Yet you look at the Torah, and there are imperfect leaders. Abraham, why did Abraham have to have a son Ishmael? Why did Yitzhak have to have a son, Esau? Why did Yaakov have to marry the daughters of the two daughters of a crook, Lavan? Couldn't have been distant relatives. Why did Moshe is criticized? He wasn't able to go into the land of Israel. He was punished for that. Really, if he made it up, is he going to put himself in a bad light? It doesn't make any sense. You have, Aaron HaKohen made the golden calf. Leave that part out. We don't have to put everything inside. Miriam spoke ill. All the siblings of Moshe's siblings all have things bad written about them. Why? If it was made up, why would you do that? Dinah gets raped. Yosef gets sold by his brothers. You have the golden calf. You have David and Bathsheba. You have so many things that are written in the Torah that if it was made up, why would you do it? And again, this is not a proof to say, it must be true because how would you want to make this up? This is just something that shows you how difficult it is to, to make something up by putting in all the bad stuff in it. If you're making something up, it's very simple. You do only the good. Proof and point is any other religion. You look at any other religion, they never say anything bad about their leaders. About their leaders are known almost as gods. Because otherwise you'll be like, why should I follow this religion if he messed up so badly? There was a conservative rabbi. I don't think I mentioned his name last time I spoke about it. Maybe I should mention his name. He was named one of the most influential rabbis in America by Newsweek and also by the Jerusalem Post as one of the 50 most influential Jews in the world. And he says that the Exodus is not the way that it happened, if it happened at all. This is a conservative rabbi. And it never ends to amaze me of what these people come up with, and there's people say. Now this was being said, before we had archaeological proofs. And by the way, archaeological proofs. I've had conversations with people and be like, well, there's archaeological proofs of the Torah. And there's not. I'm like, I don't know how this argument just went. I'm not sure what just happened over here. I'm like, okay, have a good day, sir. I don't know what to do. I'm like, there's archaeological. How can you say no to facts and evidence? It's like imagine going to court and I say I have some evidence, and the judge says no, I don't want to look. I don't want to see that. Does it mean it doesn't? What are you playing a little? Because you can't see it, it doesn't exist. Like what? And there's so much archaeological findings in it. That actually validate the Torah. So we see over here the likelihood of the Torah being true. And we also have the archaeological evidence that's coming up. Now archaeological evidence is coming up pretty recently. So you had older conservative and reform rabbis say, this didn't really happen this way. All of a sudden now there's archaeological proofs. Now they have to change it. Do you imagine a rabbi saying the Exodus didn't happen or the way that it happened? But what are you teaching? I don't understand. What do you like? The problem is that once you change one thing, that's it. You're changing everything. Yeah, we're going to get into that.
Of the Exodus?
Yeah, we're going to go through all. I'm going to go through, well, not all though, because we have the whole class. I'm going to give a brief overview on it. There was. Let's give the good ones. So the Egyptian papyrus. The papyrus is like the Egyptian material that the type of writing that they use on the sheets to write in it. There are numerous types of papyrus that mention, first of all, things about the Jews in Egypt, including servants named Shifra and Semitic names that are written inside these in these ledgers. You also had two separate Egyptian papyrus that testify the Nile turning into blood. And it's funny because when you present this information to people that argue against the Torah, they'll say no, this is and they'll literally pull. I'm like, you're not being intellectually honest. You want to argue with me, that's fine, but once we present facts, you have to change your argument. I'm like, you can't say well, everything is falsified. It's not one documentation we found. We found numerous amounts of documentation. You have a different papyrus that was discovered that speaks about 10 catastrophes that happened in Egypt. You have Professor Velikovsky. He was a known expert of chronology of the Egyptian kingdoms, and he studied this document. It says this document belongs exactly in the period where the Jewish tradition says that the Jewish people left Egypt, which means the 10 catastrophes, the Nile turning to blood, all this happened during the same time period that the Jews were supposedly in Egypt. You have Dr. John Wilson, a professor of Near Eastern Studies in the University of Chicago. He translated another papyrus text that had also the Nile flowing with blood. And it says over there, and I'm quoting, if one drinks of it, one rejects it as of human blood. Now, how do you make that up and convince the Egyptian people to put that in also in their thing? You had also darkness. There was a diary that was preserved that said that darkness covered the western heavens. You also had in 1987 there was a shrine. It was at El Arish. It was near the modern Gaza. It was moved there from Egypt in 626 BCE. That, and I'm going to quote over there. There was no stepping out in the open for a period of days that one face could not see its equal. Which means that there was darkness written on Egyptian shrines about this information. Now, so there must have been something going on over there. There must have been something going on. And again, there was other mentions of the plagues. There were things from the hail to the locust to the firstborn dying. An historian by the name of Will Durant says that each passing year adds to our store of knowledge and provides us with more and more documentation, inscriptions, monuments, and excavations, which confirms the Bible's historical accuracy. Science is now, and I'm quoting, science is now in a position. You know what? This is, anybody wants to look it up. It's in the Story of Civilization, Volume 1. It was and I'm continuing the quote. Science is now in a position to state categorically that the Bible is factual till proven otherwise. Yet you have people, science people, that don't want, is this not fact? Like, what more do you want? You have facts written over here that this happened. Yet they claim that still it doesn't happen. Yet you have rabbis, conservative and reform rabbis that claim that it didn't happen. Like, you're not being intellectually honest. How can you claim something when you're not being intellectually honest? You have also, the story of the flood. We're not going to get into this. We spoke about it at length. There was so many civilizations, anywhere from Australia to India, Polynesia, Tibet, Kashmir, Lithuania, ancient Greece. You had, Asia, that all speak about a flood. Everybody made it up. Everybody did it. It's absurd to say that everybody made up the same story. There was also in 1965, the British Museum identified 2 more tablets confirming the flood. You have a 1987, a book by the historian Paul Johnson. He affirms, and I'm quoting, there can now be no doubt that some kind of huge flood did occur. So you have here historical, facts from historians, not religious Jews, going and saying, with their big noses and the bags of money, saying, hey, this is what you should say over there. This is something known from the secular world that's coming into over here. What more do you need? You have also animal bones put together with whale bones. You have fish bones that are found on mountains. You have different, proofs, that shows that there was a flood. We have things about Joseph as well. Also, we're not going to go there. We have artifacts from the time of the Maccabees. We have there's questions. Is that what you're writing down?
No, there's like a countdown on my Instagram. I don't know what it means.
The video's going to stop, and
Okay,
we'll have to
I'll start
redo
it
it.
again.
Okay. All right. So technology. All right. Okay. So anyways. Whatever. We have from the book of Esther to Masada, there's so many archaeological findings that actually prove the historical accuracy of and I want to read you something else, of the Bible. The archaeologically and the book, the archaeological and the religion of Israel. This was from the John Hopkins Press in 1942, page 96. The Mosaic tradition is so consistent, congruent with our dependent knowledge, that only a hypocritical pseudo-rationalism can reject its essential histocracy. Which means is that there's so much evidence that it's accurate. The people that saying that it's not accurate are pulling out of what? An archaeologist, a very famous one, Ernest Wright. He was a president of the American School of Oriental Research. And he wrote like this: the Bible scholar no longer bothers to ask whether archaeology proves the Bible. Such a question is certainly to be answered in the affirmative. So we have here numerous proofs that the Torah it is accurate. It is accurate. The Professor John Brimson wrote, the biblical traditions and the archaeological evidence relate with striking accuracy. And finally, one more. Harvard John Bright. His first name wasn't Harvard. He actually comes in from Harvard. Well, it's so busy. Is it okay? Okay, Baruch Hashem. Yeah. Okay. So Harvard person from Harvard by the name of John Bright said, and I'm quoting, there can be little doubt that ancestors of Israel had been slaves in Egypt and escaped in some miraculous way. Almost no one today would doubt it. With all this, you still have people that deny it. Now, why? Why are they denying it? Not because they're intellectually honest, because they have another agenda that they want. They don't want it to be true. Now, when you're presenting facts, people say, I always ask this, I'm like, if I present you enough evidence, facts, would you become religious? Maybe, possibly. But when you present them the facts, what stronger evidence could be than archaeological evidence? Like, what more? All this was made up? Everything was planted? Everything was that? So there's numerous amounts of proof that we could say that the Torah is legit, and there is an astounding amount of evidence that shows that its accuracy. The final part that I want to speak about is the oral law. And the oral law, the reason why this comes into play a lot is that people say, okay, I'll believe in the Torah, but the rabbis, the oral law, people don't know the oral law is actually the Torah, but whatever it is, they complain about everything that's possible to complain about. Now, the funny thing is that usually when these people come and ask me these types of points or questions, if you may, I usually say, okay, the Torah you believe, right? The Bible, the 5 books of Moses, that you believe. Like that's true. That I'll give it to you. That's true. I'm like, so do you keep? I don't know if they realize that the 613 commandments are all based on the 5 books of Moses. It's nothing to do with anything else. So I'm like, do you keep the commandments? So they're like, the basic commandments of the Torah I do. Basic commandments, the Torah is 613. And then I'll say, you know what? Let's not even answer it. Let's not even go to that because I know the answer to that. The 10 Commandments. Do you keep the 10 Commandments? And they'll say, yeah, the 10 Commandments. Yeah, the 10 Commandments I keep. And my usually follow-up question is, do you know the 10 Commandments? And it's funny because then I usually just sit back, and it's a shame, it's sad because many Jewish people don't know the 10 Commandments. And they'll say, don't steal, don't murder, don't rob. I'm like, and then I say, it says you have to keep Shabbat. Do you keep Shabbat? Per se. I'm like, so people go and they convince themselves of things that, the Torah is true and I'll keep the Torah, but then they don't keep the Torah, but they say that they keep the Torah. You realize also, Messianic Judaism, it's just Messianic Christianity, it has nothing to do with Judaism, but they don't keep the Torah. They keep the rabbinic laws. They don't keep the actual, Torah. So, people completely are confused with their lives. It's so sad how people live their lives in such a lie, and they're convinced that they're right. And it's hard to I understand that it's hard to do that, but every so often, I would strongly recommend this. Stand back of your life and just look at it. It's always good to look at a perspective how am I living? Am I doing this? Am I going in the plan that I want to? Always good to have a little bit of an overview on it. Now, when you're going on the oral, the oral law, there's many proofs that we can say that there must be an oral law. Number one, when you look at the Torah, the actual text of the Torah in the scroll, there's no vowels. If there's no vowels, then how are you supposed to read it? in English you don't need vowels, but in Hebrew the same letters will pronounce differently. For example, chalav can be chalav or chalev, fat or milk. Tremendous, there's huge difference. There's a pasuk that says v'lo yalin chalev chagi ad boker. You're not allowed to leave the chalev until the morning. What? You're not allowed to leave the milk until the morning? You're not allowed to leave there's tremendous amount of consequences that you need to know how to pronounce the words. The idea of vowels shows that the Torah was given with additional information. Now, what the additional information was, okay, we could argue that, but there must have been some sort of oral law. Furthermore, majority of the things that are written in the Torah are based off shorthand. You need to have more information on it in order to understand it. Example, Bamidbar, chapter 29, verse 1, it says, Yom Tuah Yelachem. It's going to be a day of blowing. Blowing what? Nowhere does it says what type of shofar, yet everybody knows we're blowing a shofar. Where do you get that? Even Messianic Jews, Messianic Christians, whatever you want to call them, right? They're blowing shofars. How? Why don't you, blow a whistle? Referee. Why don't you do that? It says Yom Tuah, day of blowing. Why would you choose that? So they choose and pick what they're listening from the oral law and what they're not listening from the oral law. It says you're not supposed to work on Shabbat. What's work? Nowhere in the Torah that says what work is. It says in Devarim, in Deuteronomy, chapter 12, verse 21, you have to slaughter your cattle just like I've commanded you. Yet nowhere in the Torah does it say how I command you to slaughter. Meaning that in the Torah it's already hinted that, hey, there is more information, there's more oral law to this than meets the eye. You have an etrog. What's an etrog? Totafot. What's totafot? Nowhere in the Torah does it say anything else about totafot. One thing, totafot. Sounds like some sort of Italian type of dish. Would you like some totafot? Like, yes, please. When it comes with a trog, what is totafot? How do you know what it is? What? I went French. Close enough. So, the idea with this is that when you look at Judaism, people tend to go and say, "Hey, listen, it's made, it's fake, it's whatever claim that you go and you try to prove." They're all fall on very, very weak claims. You cannot, any which way you look at it, and I strongly, today's class was really just a sort of an overview, and it's sort of like a brief summary on it, just to give you the points. But there are many, many important factors, and I really feel like, it is very, very important. First of all, anybody that is teaching anything about Judaism has to know these things. I feel very, very strongly they need to know these things, because people need to ask questions, and they need to have the answers. And these classes that we went through in the past, 32 sessions, I guess you could call it, that are very, very imperative to answer majority of the most basic questions that people ask, and some not so basic questions that people ask on Judaism. Whichever way you look at it, if you're going intellectual honesty, you're looking at it, there must be a God. It's just very, very, simple. If you're intellectually honest, if you're not, there's nothing that I can convince you. But if you're intellectually honest, it has to be that there's a God. Once there's a God, there also has to be a religion. And of all the religion, Judaism stands out so much. It doesn't even come close to anything else with so many proofs that it could show you that it's true. It should be no doubt in your mind that you're in with the 100% accuracy. There shouldn't be 99.9. No, with 100% accuracy, this is the correct religion. This is the only right religion. And the beautiful thing about this is that, in any religion, in any majority of other religions, you have to be part of that religion in order to be righteous or going with that. Judaism, you don't have to. You don't have to be religious. You don't have to be Jewish you have to be religious. If you're Jewish, you have to be religious. But in Judaism, in order to be a good person, in order to qualify to go into heaven, whatever other terminology they want to use it, you don't have to join the nation. You could remain a Noahide. Keep the 7 mitzvahs b'nei Noach, and that's it, and you're good. What other religion is it? It'd be like, hey, listen, you don't have to join our religion. Just do your thing, and just be a good person, and you'll be good. Which other religion is? I'm talking about real religions, not Scientology or whatever, made up stuff. But I'm saying when you go into the only religion that not only goes and tries to go and get people to come to the religion, it goes and says, you don't need to. You have to be just a good person and follow these basic 7 laws, and that's it, and you're fine. So we see over here something that's very important. This type of information should tremendously strengthen your understanding of Judaism and your belief in Judaism and your observance of Judaism. And if it doesn't, then that means that you didn't internalize anything. And I would strongly recommend to review. There are some classes over here that are very, very fundamental into understanding the basics part of Judaism, and you have to know it. And by the way, the classes that we gave on the oral law, that thing, very important classes. Classes proving the Torah, very, very important. These are things that are foundations of Judaism, and you have to understand it, you have to know it, you have to be able to explain it. The more that you do that, you realize when you're going to, following through with it, there's going to be a tremendous amount of difference of the way that you live your life. Now, B'ezrat Hashem, what the plan is, going forward, but now that we finish with this is just the basic foundation. Now the plan is, and we'll see B'ezrat Hashem how, with the help of God, how we'll be able to continue with the next series that we're coming up. We're going to go and build up on Judaism, how the correct understanding of Judaism. What is the foundations of Judaism? We're going to go through 13 principles of faith that we're going to go through, and then we're going to understand what does it mean emunah. I have a bunch of series that I want to plan out. Prayer also, people have a very hard time with prayer. There's tremendous amount of information that we want to B'ezrat Hashem go through to have such a strong understanding of Judaism that I really feel like if you go through these types of classes, and by the way, these type of classes always need review. We tend to forget very, very, frequently, things that are important. Men more so than women, but everybody is on the same boat. The idea is that the more that you have a stronger foundation, the better your life is going to be. The better that you're going to be able to relate to these ideas, the better Jew that you're going to be, the better husband that you're going to be, the better wife that you're going to be, the better everything. So that being said, any questions? And by the way, questions doesn't have to be the end of this topic. Ask me any questions on this series or just anything in general. Yeah.
Okay, so I understand the whole the proof that there is a God, because I feel like the answer is just because there has to be.
Okay. And by the way, you should know that everybody has a different proof that holds for them. Everybody, like, for something that you'll prove that's good for, that this is how you see God, somebody else will be like, no, I see something else. The same thing with Judaism. That's why we went through different types of proof, because everyone connects in the...
Right, so I don't really understand the one that there has to be, like, why there has to be a religion. Why
because if God created the world, there must be a purpose for it. If there's a God...
Why can't the purpose just be to be a good person?
To live your life?
Yeah.
Because when you look at the way that the world is, and this is when you study the world, the way that the world is, how are people living their life? Are people living their life? Are people, put it this way, are people happy in their life? Are people successful in their life? I'm not saying financial, emotional, I'm saying just in general, internally. Like, when you're looking at things, if there was a creation, there must be a purpose. And if you want to say the purpose is just to live, then creation failed. Because look at it, people are not living. There's clinical depression in every corner of every house, unfortunately, almost. It's terrible what's going on in the world. So if you want to say that the world was created just for this, that is a fail. And we know God, if you believe in God, then you know God doesn't fail. That's not, but we cannot comprehend. And this is something we'll speak on the future classes. How do we understand God? It's something we have, And so that being said, there must be something more to it. There must be something more to it, because when you're looking at it, it will be all a failure.
But our belief is mostly like, not only just this life, is the next world also.
Yeah.
So then a person who doesn't believe in the next world, then...
A person who doesn't believe in the next world, first of all, doesn't believe in Judaism. Right. But almost every religion has a belief in the afterlife. Almost every religion has a belief, because it has to be, for that reason as well.
But is that one of our ideas, one of our goals, one of our...
In the afterlife?
Purposes
in the next world? Yeah, we know that the purpose, right, yes, foundation, that there is another world. And that's the main world. That's good? Okay, any other questions? Yeah. Any questions from the live feed? Yeah. No other questions? Going once, going twice, going 3 times. Going 4 times. You know how Jewish people try to raise money, right? Going 5 times, going 6 times. Anybody, please. Anybody. Okay. No questions? We're good? Okay. Chazak Baruch.